Good morning. Sorry about that. This is Quentin Worm. I'm going to be doing a webinar on custom tables in the family of Revit with parameters. And here is a few that I made a couple of months ago, just playing around with it, trying to get familiar. All right, to start off, I'm just going to go to a new family template, and then in the little pop-up, I'm just going to come down to family, the furnitures, since I will be creating a table. I'll just go ahead and open it. And to get started, I just like to start with the 3 basic parameters. So in the family type, in the top left corner, we'll open that up for family types. And to create a new parameter, the bottom left of your pop-out will be new parameters. So we'll just click that and it'll open the pop-up for parameter properties. And I usually just start off with the length parameter as a type parameter because I want this uniform on every single one that I open, and leave it as a length type parameter since it will be dimension based. Click OK, then repeat it for my width, leave it type and length, and then I will make my height one. And now that we have those 3 created, I will go in and set my height. I'll do 30 inches for my height, 6 foot for length, and 3 foot for width. Now that I have those 3 created, I will jump back into my reference view. And now I'm going to create some reference planes for my table to go off of. Oops, delete that. All right, now that I have those created that pretty much make a square, I'm going to go in and make a dimension. And first thing I do is just start top left, center right. And what you want to do with these is create an equals dimension. So when we change the overall dimension later, it's all uniform off the center line. So it's not 2 foot, 3 foot over here. It's all equals. So we'll create another one for this side, equals. Now that I have those created, I'm going to do 1 overall dimension up top and 1 overall dimension on the left. And now that I have those created, I will make a label dimension off of those length, width, and height. So all you do is select a dimension. Up on the ribbon, you'll have this labels dimension on the ribbons, and under the drop down, you'll see the 3 parameters that we created. And so for the left, I'll just use width, and you'll see that change width equals 3 foot. And then I'll change the top dimension to the length, and then you'll see that change to length equals 6 foot. And so you can check them by going back into your family types and changing them. And you'll notice if they're correct when you hit apply that the lengths change. And so I'll just revert back to 6 foot and 3 foot. And now that I have those created, I like to work on the height next. And so I'll jump to the front view, and then I'll go over to the create tab and then add a new reference plane. And so I'll just add one up top. Go in and add a dimension for it. Since it's just one uniform dimension, you don't need any equals dimensions because it's all going to be based off the height dimension. And so once again, we'll go up in the label dimensions on the ribbon, and in the drop down, pick height. And you'll notice that it changes to height equals 2'6". And then after I create my height, since I'm in this view, I also like to create another reference plane. And I'll just go ahead and add a dimension to it now. And don't worry about setting it right now. You'll change that in the parameters. So I'll go back up to family type, and we have height, length, and width. So now we're going to add a new parameter, and this one I like to call table top thickness. And pretty much all the parameters after this, I always make it an instance parameter. So it's custom to each family that you load into. It's not going to change every single table that you've loaded in. It's only going to affect the one you have selected. And so I'm just going to click instance type and leave it as a length type parameter and dimensional. Click OK. And I usually just set it to 1 inch for now. And so now that I have that added, I'll go and select the dimension, hop back up to the label dimensions, and now you'll see in our drop downs the tabletop thickness. So I'll just select that, and it auto redimensions it to 1 inch. Now that I have that one finished, I'll drop back to reference level, and I will start creating my tabletop. So I'll go over to Create tab and Extrusions, and then the rectangle tool. I'll just go in and draw my rectangle. And after I draw it in, it's important to always lock your lines to the reference plane, because whenever you resize these dimensions, they will not move with it. I'll show you what happens on the tabletop thickness later. So now that I have all those locked into place, and that's finished, you don't need to worry about the start extrusion or end extrusion. We'll mess with that after I finish this. So we'll check mark to finish it. And you'll see the arrows saying that it's extruded. Jump back to the front view. You can see the extrusion now. And you can either click the arrow, drag it up top and lock it, or you can use the align tool and just click the bottom of it and bottom extrusion and align it that way. And I'm not going to lock it this time, so I can show you what happens when you don't lock it. So I'll go into family type pop-up, and under the height, I'll just change that to 2 foot and click apply. And you can see how the thickness of the tabletop did not move down with the reference plane because it was not locked. So let's just revert that back to 2.5 foot. And now you can just click it, drag it down, and then back up to the line, and it'll prompt the lock again. And so we'll lock it this time. And so now when I change the height of it, it will actually move with it up and down. All right, so now that I have the tabletop completed, we'll jump back to the reference level, and we'll start on the round legs. And for the round legs, I'm going to add a center point for them. So I'm going to take my reference plane, move it inwards a little bit all around it. And now that I have that complete, I'm going to jump back into family types and create a new parameter. This time, I'm going to create two of them. I'm going to call one leg thickness, and I'm going to place it as a instance parameter just so it's easier to change it whenever you're in a project overall. And then create another one. This one I like to call table edge to leg instance as well. And I like to create the table edge to leg so I can adjust how far I want the legs to be from the edge. If I want to face smooth at the edge of the table or a couple inches in, give your fingers some room to lift the table up for moving. So I'll just 4 inches there. And under leg thickness, I'll just go with 3 inches. Click OK. And now I will go back to the Create tab, Extrusion, and I will start creating my round legs. For now, it doesn't matter what size. You can put them all different sizes. You can get them close if you want. Make them super large. It doesn't matter because we're going to come in and create the label dimensions on them to where they will equal whatever you want. And so now I'm going to create dimension, diameter, go ahead and place dimensions on all the circles. Now that I have the circles dimension, I can go through and select all the dimensions at once. And under the label dimensions, I can change them all at the same time under leg thickness. So once I apply that, you can see that they all change to 3 inches. All right. And an easy way to test this is back in the family types. Just change the thickness to something else, and you can watch them adjust. And if they don't adjust, you know you've done something wrong. So it's always a good way to test. All right, now that just the same with the tabletop, you don't need to worry about the extrusion start or finish. We mess with that afterwards. So we'll finish that. We have the legs created. Now we're going to dimension the center lines of them so that we have a dimension to pull it off the edge of the face. So you just need the 4 dimensions around it. You can select all of them at once. And back under the label dimensions, the drop down, we'll do table edge to leg. And now that changes everything. All to 4 inches. You can go back in and check it under your family type. We'll just make it 6 inches. And you can see it moving all 4 of the round legs together. So you know that everything is locked in right. It's always a good way to test. Change that back to 4 inches. All right, now that we have the legs locked in place, we're going to connect it to the bottom of the tabletop. And you want to make sure you always lock it in place, because when you change the height, it will not move with it. It will stay in place. And now that we have our round legs in place, connected to the bottom table, I'm going to jump to the 3D view. And then I like to change it to hidden line, give it smoother look. Now we're going to talk about the yes/no parameter and for the visibility of the legs. So to create that, we'll go back into the family types, create new parameter, and I'll call it round legs. And I'm going to make this an instance so I can have multiple tables in a project with different leg types. And this time, we're actually going to change the type of parameter from length to yes/no, and that will give us the option to have it on or off. And then that will change the group parameter from other to the very bottom to visibility. So you can see that it is a visibility parameter that will turn something on or off. So we'll click OK, OK. And so now that we have that parameter made, you'll need to select the leg extrusion. And under the properties on this left side, you'll see this graphics visibility. And on the far right of it, you'll have this little associate family parameter box. And you'll want to click that box and it'll have a pop-up. And under that pop-up, you'll see our round legs parameter that we made. And so we'll highlight, select, OK. And so now you'll see in the visibilities graphics that it's grayed out now because it's equal to the yes, no parameter. And so now when I bring the family type back up, you'll have this check mark saying it's on, unchecked, it's off. And when it's off, it'll be slightly grayed out, indicating that it's turned off. And when you turn it back on, it will be back to the solid black lines. All right, now that we have that made, we'll start on these square legs. The square legs give a little bit more trouble because they have a little bit more going on with it because it's not just one dimension and one center line. You got 4 separate lines that have to connect to these center points. And so we'll get started on that. So we'll go back to the Create tab, Extrusion. And I always start off by drawing my reference planes. So under Create, we'll go over to Reference Planes. And I just like to zoom in on one of my circles and draw reference planes all around it. You can get as close as you want or not. It doesn't really matter because we'll fix that with the label dimensions. All right, so now that I got my reference planes drawn around it, I'm going to go back to my dimensions. And just like the tabletop, I'm going to create my equals dimension. And then a overall dimension. And so now that I have those created, just like with the tabletop, I'm going to select my overall dimensions for it. And under my label dimensions, I'm going to pick leg thickness. And so you can see that that changes it all to 4 inches and it lines up my reference planes with the circle. And so now I have all that correct. I can go back to the Create tab, or the Modify Create Extrusion, and create my square. So just like the table, I'll create it and then lock all the lines in place. And this is a big one to remember because when you don't lock these in place and change your leg thickness or pretty much any one of these dimensions, your legs are going to go wild. And so now that I have all that created, the easiest way that I have found is just select all of it and copy and paste to the other 3 corners. And you're going to have some dimensions break. And I haven't found a way past that yet, but it's easy to fix. And so I just copy and paste all those. And I have to go back and delete these dimensions and re-add them as equal dimensions. which doesn't take too long. We'll just go back up to dimensions, click each line, pop up, equals. Do that for the rest of them. Because when you don't put these equals back in there and change the thickness of it, it goes haywire as well. And then you can check them. They're all locked together. And now that we have that complete, don't have to worry about start or end extrusion. We fix that afterwards. We'll finish it. And I always like to check to make sure everything is correct. So back in family type, I'll open that back up, change my length and width. And whenever it moves, everything should be connected. There shouldn't be one square way bigger than the other, because then you know you messed something up. So everything's good. Everything looks right. So I'll switch that back to 6 and 3. Apply. All goes together. Now that we have the legs created, we'll go in and select them and lock them to the bottom of the tabletop. And now that's created, we'll go just like the round tables. We'll go 3D view, and you can see why I do the round tables first and square second, because the square pretty much hide the round one. So it's easier to do round first, square second. So we'll go back up into family types. We'll create a new parameter, and I'll name it square legs. And under type of parameter, we'll change it from a length parameter to a yes/no, so we can turn it on or off. We'll change the group to visibility and make it an instance parameter. And now since we have that made, we'll go in and connect the square legs to the square legs parameter. So back over under the properties, the visibilities on graphics, we'll click the little square next to it, the associate family parameters, and now you will see the square legs added to it. So we'll select that, okay. And so now the square legs is linked to the square legs yes and no parameter, so we can turn it on or off. And just for fun, for all my tables, I also like to add one more parameter to it. And so we'll go back to family types, create new parameter, and I like to call this one materials, or just material. Instance, so I can change different tables to whatever I want. And on the type of parameter, we're going to change it from length to material parameter. And that automatically changes the group parameter to material and finishes. So we'll click OK. And then now under your family types, you'll notice it has an add-in for material. And so under the by category in the far right corner, there'll be a little 3-dot pop-up. And then towards the bottom of it, you'll have your materials you can add in. So at the very bottom, I go to the wood, and I always like to add in walnut because that's a nice finish. And you just have to click the add materials to documents to make sure it's in your Revit family materials. And then you'll notice it pop up on the list. And all you have to do is select it and click OK. And so now that we have that added into our family types, we'll have to link the table to it. And so the best way for that is just to select everything. And just like the yes, no parameter under the visibility, you'll have materials and finishes. And so in that far right, you'll see the associate family parameters. You'll open that and you'll notice the materials parameter pop up. So you just select OK. And now when you select off of it and turn on your realistics, you'll see that it pops up to the walnut finish. Now that we have that made, we'll go into different family types to where you can have a table, end table, coffee table. For this one, we'll just make a coffee table. So we'll go back to family type, and under next to the type name over here on the far right, you'll see a new type. And so we'll just create new type, and I will label this one table 36 inch by 72 inch. And this is creating the one that I have now for this table right here. And so now to create a second one, you just go back to the new type. And this time I'm going to label it coffee table. Let's do 30 inch by 60 inch. And so after you create it, you'll notice in the drop down, you'll have table 36 by 72 and coffee table 30 inch by 60 inch. And so we have the coffee table selected. So anything you change in here is only going to affect the coffee table. And so I'm going to change the height to 18 inches, length to 5 foot, and width to 30 inches. And I'll hit apply, and you know everything is correct when you see the image shrink to your coffee table size. And everything looks good. You can check back and forth, go to the table, click apply, and see it change. All right, so everything looks good. And so now I'm going to load this into my project. I'm going to add it along with my others. I'm going to add my table in. And then under your family, you'll notice when you click the drop down on it, you'll have table 36 by 72 and coffee table 30 by 60 inch. So I'll select that, add that one in. And then now when you're in here, you can check your visibility yes/no parameters. So you'll just select table, and then under your properties, scroll down to the bottom for visibilities, and you'll see square leg and round legs parameter that I made. I have the square turned on, so I'll turn that off, turn round legs on, and you'll notice that it changes. So I can just change those back and forth. Do it on the coffee table as well. And then I also like to check my dimensional parameters that I made. So my leg thickness, table edge to legs, and tabletop thickness. So if I wanted a thicker tabletop for my table, I can make it 2 inch. And you'll notice that changes. And then I can make it a 5 inch thick leg and make it 2.5 from the edge. And you'll see that it puts it right on the edge for a nice smooth finish. And that's how you create custom tables in the family editor of Revit. Thank you very much for joining my webinar. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. Can I add optional materials to the same table? You kind of can, but the best way is that instance parameter, because I can go back into my table and just like the visibilities, I can just come over here to the materials and finishes, and I can select select the walnut, and that little 3 dot will pop up. And then I can just change it to a different type of wood if I want. Like I'll add in maple, which is already in here. And that way it only changes the one table that you have. So now that one's a maple table, and then I have a walnut table. Can you do angle legs? Yeah, you can pretty much make any leg you want. It's just dependent on how complicated you want. You can come into the front face, and let's say you want to make a angled leg, you can just start your extrusion from your front face, and then I'll just add it off here to the side and just put it at an angle. And then this is kind of where you want to work with your extrusion start and finish. I'll just do 2-inch and finish it at 6-inch. And so now when I finish that and go into the 3D view, you'll see the leg in there. And then you can also create your reference plane to make it more exact, just however you want it. You can limit the distance the leg can go just from your reference planes, like I did for my legs, because I can add other dimensions into it as well. Like instead of this one being 4-inch, I can make a new parameter where it can be 6-inch and 4-inch. So I have a rectangular leg, mostly based on where you want your reference planes and how far you want it to go. You can just change these two. And to answer that different materials in the families, let me get out of this. Under your family types, you can always, like I have the table selected, so I can change my table in here as well to be a cherry wood. And so now that one's a cherry material, and then I can switch back over to my coffee table and it still saves it as a walnut finish. Any more questions or questions I didn't answer? Yeah, you can constrain that by in the family types, just like how I made the leg thickness a instance parameter. All you have to do is highlight it and click the edit parameter, and you can change it to a type parameter, which if he ever mess with that, it will affect everything and he'll know that he messed up. So that should limit him pretty good not to mess with it. All right, if that's everything, thank y'all for joining my first ever webinar. It was a pleasure. Hope I didn't mess up too bad. And this is being recorded. It will be sent out after maybe a day or two, but thank you everybody for joining me. Appreciate it.